Friday, the 13th of July, and we start with the US dollar. You will see that we have included some extra material on our charts this time around. Firstly, a look at the table, you will see that there is a higher and a lower, higher on the bottom of the table and lower at the top of the table. Higher in this instance means the monthly time frame and lower means daily time frame, while current is the current weekly and last time is last week's weekly time frame. So in terms of the dollar, we can see that on the monthly time frame, it's in a bearish correction, but we found ourselves in a strong bullish trend in the weekly chart and a bullish correction, because you can see that the price has slightly dropped towards the averages. If we then look at the different trends in the price chart, we can see that the long-term trend is kind of equaling out, but it is slightly downwards. And then the medium-term trend, the red and green, is positive, as well as the short-term blue trend. And our momentum, medium momentum, that is in the bottom window, is also still positive, even though the momentum is slowing slightly down on the weekly time frame. Next, we come to the US government bonds 10-year yield, and here we see a very strong bullish scenario on both the monthly, the weekly, and the daily time frames. This is also bared out by our trends. The long-term trend is green, the medium trend is green. The short-term trend is touching on the medium-term trend, but we have still a strong or a momentum that moved upwards since last week. And then in terms of the volatility of the SP 500 index, we see that we have a strong bearish trend here, even though on the higher time frame there is a bullish correction. And our medium term momentum is moving downward as well. So volatility quite low at the moment. Then we move to the SPY. And here we are still bullish on all time frames. And we can also see that all our trends are bullish as well. And we can see that the medium-term momentum, even though it has flattened out, it is still upwards. And then we're going to look at this QDVO. Our internet is slightly slow at the moment, so let's be patient. There it is. So this is a growth income ETF, which move a bit faster than the SPY. And so we put it also in here so that you can see maybe a faster movement in terms of the SPY, even though the picture look very similar to the SPY here, but we don't see the strong bullish trend on all time frames. Last week there was a bullish correction, and on the higher time frame this growth and income ETF still have a strong bearish trend. Brent crude, we saw quite a uptick in Brent crude, as you can see. There is a strong bearish trend on the medium trend, or let's rather say on the weekly chart. So the weekly chart is continuing its bearish trend that was also evident last week. However, on the monthly chart, we have a strong bullish trend and also a strong bullish trend as expected on the daily chart. On our long-term, on our trends in the on the chart window or the price chart, we see the long-term trend there, and however, the medium trend is downwards, as well as the blue line, but price is touching and almost going above the short-term blue line. Momentum is downwards. The South African rand against the dollar, we see that in terms of our table, we are still continuing the bullish correction. So it means that the dollar is strengthening. However, on the lower and the higher time frames, we have a different scenario. So it is kind of mixed at the moment. But if we look at the trends, we see that the long-term trend is still downward, medium trend is upward, and the short-term and medium trend has just met. The medium-term momentum is slightly bullish, but still underneath the what we would consider a bullish momentum. Next, we go to gold. Gold is continuing its strong bearish trend on both the weekly and the daily time frame. However, it is still in a bullish correction on the monthly chart. And if we look at the moving averages in the line chart, then we see on the long-term trend is still upwards, but the medium-term trend has now crossed underneath it, and the short-term trend is also in a downward moving trend. In our second window, the market state engine, or our medium-term momentum, is downwards. However, it has slowed down slightly. Then we get to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is continuing its strong bearish trend on the monthly and the weekly chart. However, there is a strong bullish trend now on the daily chart. In terms of our moving averages, the long-term trend is downwards, the medium-term trend also downwards, as well as the short-term trend. However, the short-term trend is still above the medium-term trend. And if we look at the medium-term momentum in the second window, we can see that the thicker black line is now touching the thinner black line, which means there is a possibility for the medium-term momentum to turn upward. That is on the weekly chart. And then we get to the different satrics. ETFs, the MSCI World is, as we can see, in a bullish trend in terms of both the medium of the monthly, the weekly, and the daily chart. And that is bared out by our moving averages, prices above the blue short-term trend. And our medium-term momentum has turned upwards. The thick black line is above the thin line. Emerging markets have a bit of a different picture. There is still a strong bullish trend on the monthly chart, but we have a bullish correction, and then even on the daily chart now, a strong bullish trend. The medium-term momentum is also turning sharply downwards. So people are de-risking. However, if we look at the moving averages, both the medium and the long term is moving still upwards. However, the blue short-term trend has crossed below the medium-term moving average, and price is kind of hovering between the medium term and the long term at this stage. Satrix 40 portfolio, quite a mixed picture here. We have a bullish correction on the monthly chart, but a strong bearish trend on our weekly chart and a bearish correction on the daily chart. Medium-term momentum is also strongly downwards. Price is below the blue short-term trend line, and the medium-term turned red for a long time already, and is way down or below the long-term trend. Then if we look at the dividend plus portfolio of Satrix, we see somewhat of a similar picture. Still in a bullish correction in terms of the monthly chart, strong bearish trend on the weekly chart, and a bearish correction on the lower time frame or the daily chart. But here the short-term trend is still above the the long-term trend, but below the medium-term trend. Price is below both the long-term trend and the short-term blue trend. Medium-term momentum is quite strongly downwards. Look at bonds, South African bonds, and here we have quite a bullish trend on both the monthly and the weekly, and it is a bullish correction. As you can see, last week it dropped quite a lot. Not dropped a lot, but it had quite a bit of a range in terms of trading, shorter range this week. And we can see on the medium-term momentum in the second window that there is a slowdown of the thicker line, closing a little bit, pinching towards the thin black line. So momentum is slightly slowing down. And that shows also that bullish correction that we see on the daily chart. Global bonds, strong bearish trend still, and also in a bearish correction on the daily chart. Medium-term momentum is downwards, but not sharply, and the same also with our moving average trends. and Satrix Pro property, we have a strong bullish trend with a bullish correction on the monthly chart. So doing quite well. We can also see from the medium-term momentum that we have quite a strong upward move of property. And the blue line has crossed above the medium term, and all three are now